Okay.
All right, Bezat Hashem. So today we're gonna focus a little bit on Basal B'Chalav. We've been focusing a lot on Shabbat lately, so we're gonna get to hopefully Bezat Hashem. We're gonna get to Basal B'Chalav. When we talk about Basal B'Chalav, we obviously know that it's milk and meat. We're not permitted to have milk and meat together. The Torah, in fact, it tells us like this: the way the Torah describes us that you're not allowed to have it is Lot.
Sorry, Rabbi.
No problem. It's still in the middle of the recording.
I started the recording. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
So when the Torah describes basal b'chalav, having the combination of meat and milk together, it says it in the Torah 3 times. In fact, the same way each time. Lo tevasher gedi b'chalev imo. You shall not cook the goat in its mother's milk. Now, Chachamim obviously extended this to all sorts of meat and all sorts of, and not only specifically that animal in its mother's milk. And the Gemara explains us why does it have to say 3 times in the Torah. So the Torah explains us that there is an isur, obviously, to eat it. There is an isur to benefit from it, and like what the Torah actually says, there's a isur of cooking it. Okay. Now, the reason why the Torah says it in all 3 forms is to teach us that the only way it's going to be asur in the other 2 forms, meaning eating and benefit, is only if it was cooked together. Okay? Meaning, if it was just mixed together, you take some cold milk and you mix it in with, or there's a piece of chicken that fell in it, so you wouldn't be allowed to eat it de rabanan, right? But you would be allowed to benefit from it. Okay? Because it was not cooked. The Torah says that you're not allowed to even benefit from basal b'chalav, which means that if a person by mistake cooked basal b'chalav and then the food is now asur from basal b'chalav, they will not be allowed to even give it to their cleaning lady or to a goy to benefit from it, because you're not allowed to benefit, and by you giving it to the cleaning lady, she's gonna say thank you. She's gonna say, "Oh, look at how nice this person is. They're giving me to eat. They're giving me to eat. They're giving me whatever it is." So in that case, you would not be allowed to. You would not be allowed to do it. You would not even be allowed to give it to a dog to eat. What you would have to do with basal b'chalav, you would have to technically burn it, flush it down the toilet, do something to make sure that no one is going to be benefiting from the actual.
1 second, sorry. Just
Yeah.
1 second. Meat that was no, the meat that was cooked with milk. Even if it's an accident, we cannot give it even to a girl, not even to a dog. Yeah. Sorry. Thank you so much, Raf. Sorry.
Sure. Okay, so that's that when it gets to benefiting from it, it's all sorts of benefit. You would not be allowed to benefit. And of course, eating, we don't have to say. Even the cooking itself, okay, as we're gonna see more, is a problem. Okay. Now, meat and milk is different than other isurim because you're not allowed to benefit from it as opposed to other isurim which you would. So for example, if someone by mistake cooks something not kosher, okay, and I'll explain why by mistake. If they cook something not kosher by mistake, as long as it's not basal b'chalav, like what we just said, you would be allowed to give that to the cleaning lady after, and then you'd have to worry about koshering the pot, whatever it is, but you would be allowed to do it. If it was in a not kosher pot, okay, and or even for whatever reason it is, a person wants to cook something not kosher, as long as it's not basal b'chalav, again, you would be allowed to do that. You would be allowed to cook not kosher meat. You just obviously can eat it, whatever it is, and the pot is obviously going to be not kosher either. But there would be no isur to cook not kosher. However, when it comes to basal b'chalav, there is an actual prohibition. There's an actual isur of cooking the basal b'chalav. Additionally, the isur only applies to a kosher animal with kosher milk. Okay, what does that mean? That means if it's going to be a pig in cow milk, okay, or it's going to be camel milk and a cow. So in those cases, the isur of cooking doesn't apply. Obviously, the isur of not kosher applies, but the isur of basal b'chalav only applies if it's kosher meat with kosher milk. Now, many opinions say that it applies to kosher type meat, kosher style meat. What does that mean? That means that if it is a kosher animal, even if it wasn't properly, there was no proper shechita done to it, but it's a kosher animal in kosher milk, the isur would still apply. Although there are some opinions that are lenient with it, therefore it's better to obviously avoid anything that comes up with it. As a result of these halachot, it is very problematic in a way to go to non-kosher culinary schools. Okay, because in not kosher culinary schools, yes, obviously there's a lot to what to learn and all that stuff, but you would never be allowed to cook basal b'charav. You would never be allowed to cook the meat and the meat and the milk. And many times they have over there, they have the steak with the butter and all those things. So even if it's just for you to cook it, you would not be allowed to cook it, even if you're not going to be eating from it afterwards. Similarly, another issue that arises from this type of thing, if a person wants to work in a not kosher restaurant, okay, so they want to work like in a McDonald's or something like that, and they would have to cook the food. This would be a very big problem. Even not cooking the food is another issue. It's a problem in itself, and it's not so simple to be able to work in a not kosher restaurant, even if it's just as a waiter or whatever it is. But for sure, if it's to be cooking, you would not be allowed to do it. Now, I mentioned briefly that for other isurim, if it's something that's not kosher, there's no problem with benefiting from it. However, it's important to know that there is an isur to actually deal with that. What does that mean? That means that if a person has a not kosher supermarket and they would want to sell not kosher meat in there, there's a problem with that. Why? Because a person is not allowed to deal with not kosher items. If it so happens that a person has not kosher items, then they would obviously be allowed to benefit from it. So, for example, a person is going fishing. Okay, they go fishing, they catch a not kosher fish. They would be allowed to sell this fish afterwards. Why? Because their intent wasn't to catch the not kosher fish. It just came up as it was. But if their intent was to catch not kosher fish, this would be problematic, because then it's called in halacha mistacher bedavar ha'asur. They are dealing with and they're selling. They're making a business out of something that's asur, which is an isur in itself. So only if it comes up by chance, only if it's something that happens, not steady, you would be allowed to benefit from it. You would be allowed to sell it. However, if you're doing it as a steady basis, there would be an issue with it, and you would not be allowed to sell it all the time. Just the same way, like what we said, by basal b'charav, that you cannot benefit from it, you cannot even sell it, you cannot give it away, you cannot do anything like that. If a person wants to, we said about meat and milk, okay? The same way that there's a isur to cook meat and milk, there is also an isur with chicken and milk, okay? The Torah says gedi, right? It's meat. However, with poultry, there's also a problem. However, the difference is with poultry, the isur is only derabanan. Now, what does that mean that the isur is only derabanan? Not that chas v'shalom, because it's derabanan, we can be more lenient, we can play around. Rather, that the fact that it's derabanan just means that, for example, if it was cooked by mistake, you would be allowed to you would be allowed to benefit from it. Okay. We're going to see as we go along, Be'ezrat Hashem, that there are certain circumstances where because it's derabanan, we are more lenient, but not that because it's derabanan, we can right away say, oh, it's fine, it's not a problem, it's derabanan. There's still the 100% same isur to eat chicken and meat, milk that was cooked together the same way. Chachamim put it on the same level. A person should be careful when pouring boiling water into a sink that has some residue of food, because it might cause the milk and meat to be cooked together. Okay, it's not 100% asul. What do I mean by that? What I mean is that normally, or very often, people have two sinks, right? They have one sink for basal, they have one sink for meat, and they have one sink for milk. However, even if a person has only one sink, it is still okay to be putting the milk and meat dishes into the sink. Now, if they're put in together, that's a little bit problematic, like what we just said. However, this is a chumrah. This is better to be strict rather than 100% halacha, because the fact that they're put together over there doesn't make it actually isul. The only isul is if they're being cooked together, and there are some opinions that say that if you're going to be pouring boiling water on it, it's going to be considered like you're cooking it for you're cooking. So that's why a person should be careful. In general, it's not so much of an issue, because at the end of the day, when we are washing the dishes, we are washing it with soap, which means right away the tam becomes pagum, it becomes ruined. So therefore, therefore there are certain leniencies to even be able to have one sink. But of course, if a person can, we tell them to have two sinks to separate, one for meat, one for milk. But if they don't have, there's absolutely no issue with it. There are some that are strict that if they have only one sink, what they do is they put a rack in the sink to lift up the to make sure that the dishes don't actually touch the sink, so that the sink itself shouldn't get absorbed. But again, this is just an extra chumrah and not 100% necessary. Having said that, if a person were to pour directly from a meat pot while there is dishes in the sink, this could be problematic. Okay, so or this is problematic. So a person should avoid doing that if there is dirty dishes of the basal or the charav, to not pour directly from a pot that has the other one inside. Okay, you are allowed to wash dairy towels with meat towels in the washing machine. There's no problem with that. Inside a dishwasher. Now, inside a dishwasher for Ashkenazim in general, you should not be mixing the two, meaning you have the dishwasher either for meat or for milk. For Sfaradim, there is not a problem to cook one after the other, meaning if you want to use it one time for meat and then one time for milk afterwards, there would not be a problem. It should be avoided to be done together. It shouldn't be done together, but even if it is, well, if it is, it's better to ask a rabbi, but it could be okay. Okay.
We dish towel interchangeably, meat and dairy.
Sorry.
Yeah, if there the dish towel is washed, can we use it for meat or dairy?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's no
problem. There's no problem. Once it gets washed, there's absolutely nothing with it. There's nothing wrong with it. It was cleaned. It's perfectly fine. It doesn't get absorbed inside. You're never going to be eating from a towel. There's no problem with it. Okay. If there is food, just we mentioned previously that you wouldn't be allowed to cook meat and milk together. So if it was already cooked once, there wouldn't be so much a problem of reheating it. Okay, so the whole problem of cooking basal becharav is when if you're going to be cooking it to begin with. But if it was already cooked, then there wouldn't be a problem of reheating it. Okay, it's the same thing. Well, this is less practical, but the same thing would apply technically if you're not sure if there was a mixture of meat and milk and you want to cook it to find out if there was. How do you do that? By sending it to a lab, and the lab is going to make something, whatever it is, evaporate, and they're going to be able to tell you by the vapor that is there if there is if there's basal b'chalav mixed in. So you would be allowed to do that as well. Meaning, if you're not sure if there's basal b'chalav, you can continue to cook it. Okay, now eating dairy after meat. So the reason we're not discussing right now eating the milk after eating meat after milk. We're talking about eating milk after meat. The reason why we the reason why we wait before eating milk after eating meat is so that chas v'shalom we don't come to eat them together. We see how the Torah was strict about eating the two of them, eating the mixture of the two, right? Eating basal b'chalav together, and because of how the Torah was strict, where we see that you can't even benefit from it, you can't even cook it, even if it's not for you. So the Chachamim, they made us an extra. They made us an extra chumrah, and they told us that you would not be even able to eat one after the other. Just as a side note, one of the reasons that I saw for basal b'chalav, and it's not necessarily the only reason, because if I remember correctly, basal b'chalav is a chok. It's one of those halachot that doesn't have an actual real reason behind that we can understand, at least. One of the reasons why I saw basal b'chalav is not allowed is because if we look at basal, it's red. If we look at the chalav, it's white. When you're mixing the red, which is midat hadin, it's known as always the judgment. It's always known as, well, again, the goyim, they associate the red with the satan. Not that they're right or anything, but again, we associate red as also as avelot, and the lavan symbolizes like a person that is pure, that is tahor. When you're mixing the two of them, that's not good. There's many other examples like this, but that's one of the reasons that they give why HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem told us that we shouldn't be mixing the two together. So Chachamim were very strict, and they said even if it's one after the other, you should not be eating them. Now, when the Gemara describes about how long we have to wait in between the meat and milk, okay, or eating the milk after the meat. So the Gemara says simply that we should not be eating them in the same meal. Meaning, it was a certain rabbi, Mar Ukva, he said that he would wait in between meals to start eating milk or dairy. Now, that sentence in the Gemara was very vague because the Gemara didn't give an actual time frame as to how long that is. So that's why, and I'm sure many of you have heard different opinions as to how long we have to wait. That's why there are different opinions as to how long we have to wait between milk and meat. The main opinion, which everyone obviously knows, is the opinion of 6 hours. Okay, why 6 hours? There are two reasons. There are two reasons why we wait 6 hours. Okay, one is because, like we said, there was a certain rabbi that said he would wait in between meals. Now, a Talmid Chacham, it says the Gemara that they would eat their first meal 6 hours into the day. So that means that if he would wait in between meals, he would start eating after 6 hours. So that's one opinion why it says 6 hours. Another simple opinion is because if we take our waking day, right, we have about 18 hours of the day that we are awake, and we normally have 3 meals a day. So if you were to calculate the time in between meals, it makes perfect sense to say that each meal was 6 hours. Okay, so that's the opinion of the 6 hours. Now, it's worthwhile to note that there's the opinion of the Rambam, which hopefully we're going to focus on a little bit more as we go along. The Rambam himself, he says approximately 6 hours, which means that as long as you're waiting 5 hours and 31 minutes, according to the Rambam, it's okay. But the generally accepted opinion, and the general opinion that most people follow and should follow, is the 6 hours, meaning full 6 hours. Yes.
I have several questions. before I learned with the Rav, the laws, my grandparents would always respect 3 hours. I don't know why. Where does it come from? But not only my
I'm gonna
grandparents,
bring it
a
up.
lot of my friends, when I was young, would keep 3 hours. I never, and then I learned.
It's one of the things that I'm gonna bring up. It's one of the things that I
Poland,
prepared.
Netherlands, like they have 1 hour, which I thought like was very respectful.
It's not Poland, it's Amsterdam. I'm gonna bring it up. Is
Oui, Netherlands. Oui, oui, pas Pologne. Mais la Hollande.
Yeah, Holland.
Yeah. And it's
Okay. So I'm gonna get to both of those. No, it's on the list.
Thank you, sorry.
No problem. Okay. So so that's the first opinion. The first opinion is 6 hours, like we explained. Now, there's another opinion, the opinion of the Tosafot, that he says that as long as it's a different meal, it's okay. Which means what? Which means that as long as you finish the meal that you are, even if you wait a minute later or not even a minute later, you finished the meal, you did Birkat Hamazon, you cleaned up the table, that's it. At that moment, you're able to start eating milk. Okay, that's the opinion of the Tosfot. And you have a even lesser opinion, which is Rabbeinu Tam, which he says even better. Well, even better. He says even more lenient. That what? If it's within the same meal itself, even if it's within the same meal, as long if you're gonna wash your hands and rinse your mouth out, kind of like what we do between milk and meat, it would be okay for this as well. And the only reason why we said previously that the original rabbi in the Gemara, he said that you have to wait in between meals, is because only if you didn't wash your hands and rinse your mouth, that's when you would have to wait for another meal. But if you do that even in the same meal, he says it would be okay. Okay, so those are the three main opinions that are brought down.
Rabbeinu Tam was doing that?
That's what he brings down.
Wow, c'est incroyable.
Yeah. Now, having said that, we have the see where it is. Okay, so having said those three main opinions, okay, we have the opinion of the Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch, when he brings it down, he says right away a person should wait 6 hours. Okay, he says a person waits 6 hours. The Rama, the Ashkenaz opinion, he says that you can eat immediately after the meal, meaning after you wash your hands and you rinse your mouth. But he says the custom is to wait 1 hour. Okay, that's what the Rama says. The custom is to wait 1 hour. And he says it is proper to wait for 6 hours. Now, the Mefarshim, that when the Rama, because he's the Ashkenaz opinion, they talk about what he says, they say anyone that has any semblance of Torah, any like respect for the Torah, they should wait 6 hours. That's what they say. Okay, so where do these different opinions come into place? Okay, like you mentioned, there's the people of England and Germany. They have the custom of 3 hours. You have the Netherlands and Holland. They wait 1 hour. Where do these opinions come into play? So the opinion of 1 hour is very simple. It comes into play because, like what we said, the Rama himself, the main Ashkenaz opinion, he says 1 hour, right? Now, the Holland people, they follow the opinion of a very big rabbi. His name was the Chacham Tzvi. Okay, and in Holland that was their minhag, meaning their minhag was always to do 1 hour. So if a person comes from Holland descent and then their grandparents and great grandparents and always were doing 1 hour, that's perfectly fine. Why? Because again, that was their minhag. So that one is less problematic because we actually found that opinion brought down in halakha. Yes.
For instance, like if that person goes out of Holland and he goes and live in Bnei Brak or whatever, he doesn't have to accept the laws of the place, no?
Depends who you ask.
D'accord.
Depends who you ask. But again, The truth is, again, for things that are
For
personal.
Martin, because imagine somebody who sees him in a meat place, and 2 hours after he sees him eating an ice cream, he's gonna think like this guy.
Yes, but the difference is that when it comes to these things, people know that there are other customs. So
Okay.
people know that the custom of 1 hour exists. People know that the custom of 3 hours, which I'm going to talk about right now, whether it's right or wrong, exists. Okay, so there's not so much of a problem of Malita Ain in regards to that, and especially because it's not, the whole thing is also only, like we said, it's only the Rabbanan, meaning that the waiting of the waiting in between of those things, it's only Chachamim that's it. Not that it means that a person can say, oh, because it's the Rabbanan, so Safek the Rabbanan, and I'm gonna make it now only 1 hour instead of 6 hours. No, that's not what at all I'm trying to say. But what I'm trying to say is that when it comes to the custom, and this is the custom that the person has, they can continue following. Now, doesn't mean that you're allowed to adopt this custom, right? Someone that doesn't have this custom is not allowed to just say, you know what? Okay, I'm now becoming like the people of Holland, and I'm going to be following this custom and doing only 1 hour. You're not allowed. You're not allowed to do that either. Okay. Now, when the opinion of 3 hours, the opinion of 3 hours isn't really brought down in the poskim. So where does this concept come up? So there are poskim that do bring it down, but none of let's put it, none of the really famous ones. So Mechila, I can't even say that, but it's less of a known one. Where did it come from? So like I said, it was the countries of England and Germany mostly that had this custom of 3 hours. And if you pay attention, both England and Germany, they, at least back in the day, they used to have, and England still for sure has it, they have something that's called tea time, right? They have the tea break in middle of the day. They have middle. I think it's the middle in between lunch and dinner. They have tea time, which, if we go back again to the saying of the Gemara, we said that you wait in between meals. Now, based on what they were doing, based on the the custom of where they were, in between meals would be 3 hours, because they would have tea time in middle. The tea time would break it up, so it's considered like it's a new meal. So they say, okay, we now wait 3 hours. I didn't necessarily see opinions that say about the 1 hour, that if a person has the opinion of 1 hour, they should stop their custom. However, there are quite a few poskim that when they say for the custom of 3 hours, it is better to stop their custom. Having said that, there is one sort of leniency that we can add on, and this is that if there's a woman that before she was married, she had the custom to wait only 1 hour or 3 hours, and then she gets married, her husband keeps 6 hours. So normally speaking, she would have to follow the custom of the husband, and she would now have to do 6 hours. The leniency here is that before she has children, she can continue doing like her original minhag. However, once she starts having children, then she's no longer able to keep her previous minhag. What's the difference between the two? So the difference, and this is I've uniquely by Basal Becharav that I saw this, not by rice for Pesach or other things like that. The difference would be because when they say like this, since the whole thing is a matter of custom, and the woman is very often in the kitchen, she's cooking, she's taking care of different things. Many times, especially because she was used to it before, she's not used to having to keep the full 6 hours. So it's going to happen by mistake, right? We don't think that she's going to do it on purpose, but it's going to happen by mistake because of the way she's used to everything, that she might eat from it. So instead of starting a new minhag and then having her break the new minhag, even if it's by mistake, we tell her, you know what? continue with your old minhag. However, once she has children, now it changes. Why does it change? Because since she's now going to have to educate the children in the ways of the husband, and if the children see that their mother is only keeping 3 hours or 1 hour, as opposed to the husband's opinion where you have to keep 6 hours, this is not gonna it's not gonna go in the house. Meaning it's gonna cause too much balagan, too much problems. So in that case, the woman would have to completely give up what she was doing before in order to be able to follow the custom of her husband. Okay. Now,
I have another question regarding that. Can I?
yes,
Something that I
Eva.
heard again, like I never had this type of pregnancies, but I heard that a pregnant woman who has a lot of cravings and she can't, like, if she's craving like right after meat for milk, she could go with the most lenient time distance, like 1 hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, it depends on what level, and depends how serious it is. It
How
doesn't
bad
mean
it
that
is.
right away.
And
Exactly. It doesn't mean that
woman
right away. Oh, okay, I just want to have a nice chocolate. Okay, let's eat the chocolate because I can. Right? They use. I'm sure you know this very well, but many times they use their pregnancy as an excuse for everything. But again, if sometimes it is true, sometimes it really is necessary, and in that case, of course, you can
I heard
they
some
can do
women,
so.
the craving are not controllable. I have no idea
Yeah.
what it all that.
No, no, 100%, 100%. Some, and we know that if a woman was having a craving for something and she didn't have the craving, it can affect the baby, chas v'shalom. So yes, it is a valid thing, but again, it a lady has to be realistic also, and not just use it as an excuse. Okay, the same thing also would technically apply to nursing women, right? To nursing woman, if she needs the milk to help promote the breastfeeding or whatever it is, she would be allowed to wait less than the normal 6 hours. Okay, and this is what the Khatam Sofer says. The Khatam Sofer says that if a person is sick, right, he says that they can be lenient as long as they meet the conditions of washing their hands. Again, if a person is eating with a fork, they don't need to wash their hand, but the rinsing of the mouth for sure must be done. So for sick people, you can do it. There are a few a few cases where, again, we tell them at the end of the day that you would be allowed to be lenient on it, but that doesn't mean that every single case and every single excuse you say, okay, it's fine, it's only the rabbanan. That's really not how it works. There has to be, again, certain conditions that have to be met in order to be able to play around with it. And that's why if a person has a doubt in any of these situations, they should always ask a rav if it would be allowed or not. Okay. What happens if a person by mistake makes a bracha on the milk within the 6 hours? Okay, so a person ate the meat, they run around the house, they're doing whatever it is, they see a nice chocolate and they want to eat the milk chocolate. Okay, so they take the chocolate, they make a bracha, Baruch atah Hashem, she'akol niya b'dvaro. As soon as they say she'akol niya b'dvaro, someone reminds them, hey, you just finished eating meat. Or they themselves, they remember that they just ate meat. What should they do in that case? So Rav Ovadia says, this is a Sephardic opinion as well, he says right away that you should taste a tiny bit. Okay, you taste a little bit, and just for the sake of the bracha, and you move on. Meaning, you leave it, and you don't eat afterwards. The Ashkenaz opinion, though, says it depends. If you're within the first hour of eating the meat, then in that case you shouldn't taste it. If it's after the first hour, then you can do like the opinion of the Sfaradim, where you taste and you leave it. Why do they say that? They say because also the 1 hour, you can, they, at least this is what they said, that the 1 hour is the lenient opinion, the most lenient opinion. And if it's within the 1 hour, this, it's in itself, to eat the chalav is an isur. To make a bracha levatara is isur. So just because you made one isur of bracha levatara, we don't tell you to like make another one of tasting the meat, tasting the milk, in order to save yourself. But if it's after the 1 hour, so then since there are opinions that allow it after the 1 hour, it's fine.
Now I
Yes.
have a question. Would it be possible that, for instance, because today we live in kitchens or in where we can find something else that is shakol that is allowed, but if we don't have the intention of saying the bracha on that, are we allowed to take, for instance, I take a cup of milk, I say shakol nia bidvaro, and then I realize, oh, I just ate meat, okay? So, but I have some chewing gums or I have other things next to me, but I didn't have the intention when I did the bracha to include the chewing gum. Can I still take the chewing gum or not?
Very good. So this is a little bit problematic, because if you didn't have in mind, then you would technically have to do a new bracha. This is halacha in general for Hilchot brachot, that if a person makes, for example, a person makes a bracha boret peria etz on an apple, okay? They finish the apple. They walk around for 2 minutes and they see an orange. They want to eat an orange. So the halacha says that at that point, they would need to make another bracha boret peria etz on the orange. Because when they made the bracha boret peria etz on the apple, they didn't have in mind the orange. Now, there are opinions that say that, listen, that was more relevant for back in the day. What does that mean? Back in the day, when food was less readily available, so people would be very careful, like, of every little thing that they would eat. If they had in mind to eat only an apple, so that's what they would have in mind to eat. So that's the bracha only takes effect for that. But nowadays they say, because since we have Baruch Hashem, we have so much shefa, we have so much abundance, that everything is readily available, and we all know how it is where we're snacking nonstop. So then they say one bracha should be sufficient. Because why? Because this bracha that I'm making, I don't have in mind only to eat the apple. I have in mind to eat basically everything. So it really depends. It really depends if when you're making the bracha of shakol on the cup of milk, it depends on if there was a slight chance that you were going to eat this other thing. Okay, it depends on if you were just you had in mind to do the bracha of shakol and then basically finish it there, or if you were in the snacking mode where you're going to be continuing to eat. So if you were, then yes, technically you can find.
Has the intention, and it's very interesting, the intention is as important as the saying the name of Hashem in vain. Like, if my intention is not on snacking, but I just want to drink this milk thing, so basically I cannot replace it. Instead of doing either like if I don't follow, for instance, the Rav Ovadia, I'm not going to taste it, then I'm not going to say the bracha in vain, and I have this chewing gum, but I didn't think about eating the chewing gum, then I'd rather say do nothing.
So very good. So if you're saying,
it's really,
sorry,
it shows the power of the intention. It's so important.
very good. So again, if I make a bracha of shakol for the cup of milk and I don't have in mind the gum, that means I didn't make a bracha for the gum. That means that means that the bracha was absolutely nothing. In fact, the halacha goes as far as to say that if a person made boret peria etz on an olive, the olive fell. He had in mind only to eat one olive. The olive fell. He can't find the olive anymore, right? And then there's a date next to him, right next to him, but he wasn't planning to eat the date over there. He is not allowed to save his boret peria etz with the date, or even if it's another olive, but he had in mind to eat only one olive.
Yeah.
Right. And he lost it. He can't eat the other one to save the bracha. Why? Because the bracha was meant only for this one. So it's not going to help him afterwards if he wants to chew the gum or whatever, because then he didn't make a bracha for that, and then he's going to have to make a new bracha. So he didn't really get himself out of that.
On a diet and means only to eat one chocolate, but ends up eating the box. She has to make
One bar.
10 brachot.
I have a question since we opened this subject.
Gotcha.
Let's say
Yeah.
I'm setting up the table, right? And I'm putting all the salatim and everything.
So you
And
each
I want to, I look at olives, right? And I want to take an olive and I do the bracha. Now, 5 minutes later, we're sitting down and I want to eat another olive. But does that work the same? So I'm only did it on that olive that I wanted to pick before I put it on the table. And since I'm sitting down, I need to do the bracha again.
Okay, very good. So when you make the bracha and when you're sitting down and you're planning to sit down, so generally speaking, and this is also something that I wanted to bring up based on what you said, Estelle, before, that when you're making the bracha, generally speaking, you have in mind to eat what's in front of you. Okay, so when you're sitting down, for example, you're sitting down at a aperitif. Okay, aperitif is like right before the kiddush. They have small brachot here and there that they that they make the brachot on before hamotzi, each one according to their custom. When you're making that bracha borei perei ha'etz on one olive, in general, you have in mind you want to eat everything that's there, right? So you have that olive, you have that one nut that you want to eat, you have that one whatever it is. So even if you're going to get up, as long as you don't leave the room and a whole bunch of other conditions, but the point is that you have in mind subconsciously that you're going to eat the other ones. If, like we said over here, you're on a diet and your intention is really only to eat one olive, right? Because that's what the diet says. Then if you were to want to eat more after, depending on how disciplined you are in general, right? If you're the type that always says 1 + 1 is still 1, and +1 afterwards is still only 1 because you're only holding 1 in your hand, then again, that's dependent on you. It's dependent on what a person really knows. Do they know themselves? Am I really going to have one, or not? Okay, so in general, it's going to be if you're only having in mind one, and there's others in front of you. There's others in front of you. The general consensus is that when there's more in front of you, you're planning to eat that as well. So therefore, your bracha extends to all of them, unless you have specific kavanah that you're only eating one.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, like we said, in general, a person should always be waiting the full 6 hours, unless it's the reality of their minhagim, not to start adopting minhagim, but unless the reality of their minhagim is otherwise. Now, if there is a good reason, okay, they can wait 5.5 hours. Like we said, like the opinion of the Rambam, 5 hours and 31 minutes, especially if it's after chicken. And there are different examples of that. For example, if they're, at least according to the Yalkut Yosef, Rav Mordechai Eliyahu argues on this, but if a person is in yeshiva and based on the schedules of the meal, it doesn't allow for the full 6 hours. There's what to be lenient, at least according to Yalkut Yosef. Like I said, Rav Mordechai Eliyahu argues on this, and he says, especially with Bachoi Yeshiva, they're supposed to be more strict. No.
Disculpe. Sorry, Rabbi. There was no more battery.
Okay, we're okay still?
Yes, we're good.
Okay. So I was saying that we can be there are circumstances, if there's a good reason to be lenient after 5.5 hours, you're able to do that. Of course, you're supposed to wait the full 6, but you're supposed if there's a real need, you can wait 5.5 hours, especially if it's only after chicken, and that's one of the leniencies where it's going to come if you eat chicken as opposed to meat. Okay, now there is an opinion that says that when do we measure the 6 hours? There's one opinion that says that we measure it from the end of the meal, meaning if I finish my meal at 2 p.m., okay, even if I finished eating meat at 1, So I start counting the 6 from 2 p.m. and not from when I finished. But most opinions are in agreement and say that we only wait from when you actually finish. So when you're sitting at the Shabbat meal and you finish eating the meat, let's say at 1, and then the meal continues because you're having dessert, you're talking, you're having a good time, whatever, and you finish only you do Birkat Hamazon only at like 3 p.m. You wouldn't have to wait till 3 p.m. to start counting the 6 hours. You can start counting from when you actually finished. And the other opinion, like we said, says that you go all the way from the end of the meal. Okay.
Elia asked, how do we decide which opinion?
So in most opinions say that we go with
With
the end when you finish eating.
Thank you.
Okay, when you actually finish eating. Okay, there are. I'll bring this up. I guess very briefly. We're unless it's okay with you to continue a little bit more.
Sure.
Okay, so there are 2 reasons that the halakha brings down why we have to be strict for the 6 hours, or why we should wait the extra time, even though technically once you finish, you're done. So the first opinion says because when you eat meat, many times it gets stuck in between the teeth, and the Torah itself says that if meat is stuck in between the teeth, it's still considered to be like meat. So if you're going to drink the milk afterwards, it's considered as if you're mixing the two, and you're not allowed. Another opinion says the reason why we have to wait the 6 hours is because after you eat meat, meat generally has a strong taste, and it's going to be stuck in the palate. Okay, so you're going to have like fatty or whatever it is, and it's going to be stuck in the palate. Therefore, it takes like 6 hours for it to go to get out. Now, this means that if both of the reasons aren't relevant, okay, if both of the reasons aren't relevant, for example, if a person just sips a soup, okay, a meat soup, and they spit it out, okay, they suck a piece of meat and they spit it out without chewing it, without like actually eating it. So in this case, the 2 reasons don't apply. You would not have to wait. You would not have to wait the 6 hours after eating it. Okay, that's one thing. Another one would be if a person chews only fat. Okay, they chew only fat to be able to help the child or whatever it is. So therefore it's not in the palate, and there's fat that doesn't get stuck in between the teeth. You would also be allowed to do it right away. In regards to, and with this we'll finish Bezat Hashem, in regards to children, do children have to wait the full 6 hours or not? Okay, so under 3 years old, they don't have to wait. Okay, under 3 years old, most opinions say that you don't have to wait. If it's older than 3 years old, so Ashkenazim are more machmir, Ashkenazim are more strict, okay, and Sfaradim in general are more lenient with it. Okay, for the Ashkenazim, okay, they say if it's older than 9, then they should be waiting the full 6 hours. In between the 3 to 9, it's gray area that you can you can play around with it. Okay, so I guess that's about it. I guess we'll stop here. One more quick halakha. If a person is not sure whether or not the 6 hours passed, as long as they can be somewhat sure, like somewhat in doubt if they finish the 6 hours, they can be lenient, and they don't have to say, oh, I have to wait till the latest possible thing of when I finished eating the meat. If it's reasonable, like you're sitting at the meal and you're not sure exactly what time you finished eating the meat. Did you finish eating the meat at 12:30, or did you finish eating the meat at 1? So you're able to be lenient and start the 6 hours from the 12:30, and you don't have to count from the later opinion.
And anyways, you're still in the 5:30, 5 hours and 30 minutes.
Yeah.
One question to follow on the thing that you said earlier. So let's say, for example, I take a potato out of the chamin pot, right? And I eat just the potato. There's no meat, no nothing, just a piece of the potato. I have to wait the 6 hours.
Most opinions say yes. If you follow the strict opinion of the Shulchan Aruch, according to the Shulchan Aruch, you wouldn't have to wait. However, all the opinions that come on the side of the commentaries of the Shulchan Aruch, they say that you would need to wait the 6 hours.
Okay.
It's a complicated halacha. It's not something that I can explain.
Might as well eat the meat from the chamin.
But yes, most opinions are in agreement that you would have to wait the 6 hours. But if you follow the strict Shulchan Aruch himself, he says no. The Shulchan Aruch says that as long as you didn't eat the actual meat, right, you wouldn't have to wait the 6 hours. So even if it was cooked in the same thing, everything, he says you wouldn't have to wait the 6 hours. But most of the opinions
then
say
that means that potato is not considered basari, but would you be allowed to eat it during the 9 days? Following that logic.
better not.
Yeah.
Better not. Yeah.
Thank you, Rav.
Okay, with pleasure.
Thank
That's
you.
Thank you very much.
Au revoir.
Bye-bye. With pleasure. Bye.
Merci, Rav.